Hi everyone, good morning. This is Damon Scott, Marketing Director here at PVBS, and I want to thank everyone who joining us this morning for our introduction to the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. Today we will be providing an overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors fully integrated business management solution. Today's presentation will include an overview of the executive dashboards, our fully integrated web time and expense system, as well as some project setup, including billing setup, managing funding, invoicing and invoice formats, managing indirect rates as well. So a couple of housekeeping things to go over. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our PVBS YouTube account later today. As we're going through the webinar, if you have any questions, you can post them into the question section, and we'll try to get to those as we go along. If we cannot get to your question, we will either contact you separately or we'll try to save a little time at the end as well. Later today, you should receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We really appreciate any feedback that you can provide for us to make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes and answer a few questions for us. We really do appreciate that. So today's agenda includes a brief introduction about PVBS, and then we're going to jump right into the demonstration of the product. So again, if you have questions, please ask those, and we'll get to those as we go along. So a little bit about PVBS. We are a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner, serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia, giving us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. As an experienced leader with over 14 years of success in the government contracting market, an intelligent innovator in Microsoft systems, PVBS is a direct resource to both the government contracting and the Microsoft communities. A little bit about the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. It is a rich, robust accounting solution compliant with Personalization and providing complete integration and ease of use. Also, PVBS is driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our customers and our partnership channels. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our featured presenter, Mr. Paul Skirpsky.
All right.
Paul, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And I just realized the greatest power of the webinar is that the fact that I'm sick means I can't infect anybody that's on the phone today. So Damon is wearing a hospital mask, and I think that's going to protect him, but the phone line and the internet is going to protect everybody on the call here today. But thanks for joining us today. My name is Paul Skirpsky. My background is in process reengineering and enterprise systems. I've been working with government contractors for the last about 14 years. So I want to give you a little bit of background on Microsoft Dynamics NAV before I jump into the product. So Microsoft, they've actually got 4 different accounting ERP products, with NAV being the leader when it comes to mid-market solutions. So there's more than 110,000 companies that use this solution worldwide, with over 2 million licensed users. And there's 4,000 partners like PVBS that are delivering solutions to companies. And like David mentioned, our focus is all around government contractors. And that's really the thing that helps our clients to get the true value out of the solution, is that not only do we know the product, but we also bring deep industry knowledge and also industry capabilities as part of the solution. Microsoft's business model is such that the solution can work for a lot of different industries, but they want partners to be vertically focused and also take the solution the last mile. And they look to us both on the NAV and Dynamics AX side as the partner of choice for government contractors. And we've really built a great partnership with Microsoft to deliver what I think is, from a technology perspective, the greatest mid-market and enterprise solutions in the world. And then as a partner with Microsoft, we really help to deliver that vertical IP and expertise to companies that do work with the federal government. I want to give you a little bit of background in terms of, where is Microsoft today with NAV and where are they going. So this product was actually acquired by Microsoft. It was back in about 2002, 2003 timeframe. And in 2009, Microsoft really put their stamp on it, making it look and feel more like a Microsoft product, integrating it with other Microsoft products more tightly. And then the 2013 and 2015 releases added to that experience. And the things that you're seeing now is really leveraging the Microsoft platform, whether it's how it integrates with Office 365, how it can work with Azure, how we can leverage Power BI, which is Microsoft's analytics tool. 2016, which just got released, and we expect that we'll be demonstrating that the early part of next year, it is delivering capabilities that really companies are looking for, things around workflow, e-services, and really that continued investment for Microsoft that you'll see going forward is going to be on an annual release cycle and delivering those incremental capabilities that help people to be more efficient with the product and also to get more value out of it. And to give you a high-level view of what did 2016 deliver and what are people excited about related to NAV 2016, the first is how it works with Office 365. I've seen some statistics that Office 365 has got an incredible adoption rate, and people are really gravitating towards it because it's a way to reduce their IT infrastructure. And speaking of infrastructure, being able to leverage the product on Azure is another thing that helps companies that don't want to have that back office. They can leverage that Microsoft Azure platform. And then in terms of how you access the system, you can either use the desktop version, which we're going to highlight today. There's a fully web-enabled version where you don't need to have any software loaded on your machine. There's been a tablet version and now a phone version. And the first thing that people often ask is, well, that's exciting about the tablet and phone version. Is it on a Microsoft platform only? And the answer is no. It's also available on the Android and Apple platforms. So Microsoft has become platform agnostic as related to NAV. Then down below some things that I think are important around workflow, and then the ability to help partners to more easily upgrade clients. They've put together some engineering and automation tools to help with the upgrade process. So that's a little background on NAV and why people are excited about it. And now I'm going to hop into the product to give you a little introduction to it and how it works. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to give you a general overview. I'm going to touch on the different aspects of the solution, and then I'll cover what I call a day in the life, is how are companies using it today. So what you're seeing here is I'm logged into NAV. I'm using the full client version here, and I'm logged in as an accounting manager. And the idea is based on my role, I've got certain information that's designed on my home page. There's also role-based security, which means not only the role-tailored client is what can I see, and role-based security is more like what can I do? Can I read, write, modify, delete, execute permission? So very strong security and access model with the solution. So as an accounting manager, things that are important to me are things like how many invoices do we need to create that are outstanding? How many expense reports need to get processed? And any type of corrections. So this visual cue, it also allows me to drill into it. So there's one expense report that needs to be processed. If I hit that stack there, it takes me into the list of expense reports, and I can actually open one up to see all the detail. So I can see information regarding the type of expenses associated with that expense report. I can look at the approval process. So who were the people that approved it and when did they approve it? And if there were any type of attachments related to it, these would be the receipts associated with that expense report. So the idea here is make it easy for people to see the stack of work they have, but then drill down to see the details behind it. Different charts that Microsoft makes available, so there's different charts that you can put on your home page. And then also integration with Outlook. And what I'd call this is really more linking with your Outlook. So instead of me having to log out or to go over to a different application, I can actually have my Outlook view right inside of the accounting system. So I can see my inbox, calendar, and tasks. Each one of these areas is configuration-based. So as a user, if I didn't want to show my mail, I can just hide it. And it's a way that instead of having IT support this effort, users can support themselves. You can also lock that down. If you didn't want anyone to change their view, you could also make it where they couldn't change what they see. On the right-hand column, I call this the My section. So on the bottom right-hand corner, this is a list of reports that I'm planning to process. So as a user, I can schedule a report and then identify when it needs to run and what type of output I need to have that report in. In addition, that report queue not only can be processed for one report, but if it's a recurring job, I can say I need to run this every Friday. I want to run the project status report and see where we're at. It's a way that you can automate that reporting, and then it shows up in your report inbox here. The top right-hand corner, I call this, this is the personalization of a list section. So in this case, I'm looking at my jobs, and in my demo system, these are the 5 that I typically go to. It's a way that I can list them and quickly get into them. So I can add and remove them from that list, and when I double-click it, it actually launches that job record. And this is the way that I can see all the information about that job. So not only how is it set up, but also some current information about this job. So contract and funded, value, revenue, billings, AR, etc. Each one of these values, that you has a line underneath of it, it means I can drill into it. So that $8,000 in AR balance, this shows me the list of open AR entries against this particular job 1002. If I want to know more details about any of these jobs or any of these AR entries, like if I wanted to see the original source document that created the AR, which is the invoice, I could hit Show Posted Documents here, and I can always reprint that invoice. I could also email that invoice. So it's a way as a user I can get to that source document easily and answer questions that I might have. In addition to seeing just the source document, I can look at any applied entries. So the remaining value of the AR, in this case for this one entry, is $672. If I drill into that amount, it shows me all the entries applied to it. So in this case, there was a partial payment applied. I can look at all the details of that partial payment, everything from what GL accounts did it hit to the details regarding the bank account that we deposited that payment in from the customer. So it makes it easy for a user to answer questions that they might have about a particular transaction. To give you an idea of the breadth of the application, I'm going to go to the department list, and this shows you all the different modules built into the application. So everything from financial management and marketing. For clients that have products, you can also manage those products with either manufacturing or a product resale process. Where I'm going to spend most of my time today is around the project accounting side, which is the job cost side of the system. One of the important aspects of job cost is related to timesheets. So we'll go into the process of creating a timesheet, expense report, and approval of those documents. So we'll cover that as part of the process. And then we're going to cover some of the reporting aspects. So each one of the modules comes with a series of reports, and we'll cover all aspects related to reporting. One of the things Damon mentioned was regarding dashboards. And what we'll show you is with these dashboards, one of the things that we did probably about 4 years ago was built out a series of data cubes using SQL Analysis Services, which is the data cube technology within SQL Server. Then we connected that cube to Excel. And this was a way for us to give people outside of finance access to data more in a graphical format. So there's a set of project views, so everything from an income statement by project, labor analysis report, so it's showing me hours by person. So I select a certain project, range of tasks in a period, and it shows me by person how many hours were charged by month. The GL detail is a cost summary report, so it's showing me, again, for projects and periods I select, what are all of my cost elements, both direct and indirect costs. And then my spend report is giving me a view of everything on the expense plus details about revenue and also what's been spent. So I'm looking at this project spend report. It's showing me for each month what is the revenue for the project and tasks I selected, all of my operating including indirects, my net income or loss, and also what was spent. That's how much the funding got used in that period. When you look up in the formula bar, you can see that there is no value keyed in here. It's just looking at a measure called total spent filtered by the filters I've selected. Top right-hand corner is showing me my burn rate, so each month how much of the funding I'm using. Then based on the average of the last three, it divides that by remaining funding to give me, a projection of how many months of funding are left in the system based on those job and tasks that I selected. So that's just a little bit about the dashboard technology there. And I guess, just to go back, there's also a set of financial views. So everything from a trend of your revenue, profit, and AR, a balance sheet with my key metrics over to the right, income statement, cash flow, and then for folks that have cost type work, it can also give you visibility of your rates trended over time. So you're seeing my actual versus provisional rates over time. So those are just from a general overview perspective, some of the components. Maybe we can just take a quick poll here for a second.
Let Paul catch his breath and everything here. Get a little custom. So the poll I'm going to launch up here is just Microsoft products that your company is currently using. Obviously, we're demonstrating the Microsoft Dynamics NAV. Curious how many folks are on Office 365. We talked about the integration with Outlook. Curious how many folks are on Outlook as well. And you can choose all that apply, so it's not just a one-choice thing here. We know that some companies will use multiple products here. Sharepoint is another one we're going to get to very shortly about the integration of the Sharepoint. We did talk about Excel and how that works as well. And then there's probably other products from Microsoft that your company may be using. So right now, Paul, it looks like, wow, we have a lot of folks on Office 365.
Okay.
Really about 80%. 50% on Outlook, which is surprising. It looks like about 75 for SharePoint, 80% for Excel. So there are some folks using other software out there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, sounds good. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop back into the accounting side of the system, and I'll cover what I call a day in the life, and I'll walk through the process of how companies are using the system to to manage their federal business, and also if you have commercial or not-for-profit work. I mean, that's one of the differences, is that the system can support not only the federal side, but also international and commercial work. So let me go into a job and talk a little bit about how these. So when we go back into the job card, you remembered earlier this idea of the status box. You can also have any type of notes taken against that record. And I'll touch in a second about some of the ways that we use SharePoint. So in the General tab, you see information like, this is my internal job number, description of the work, who is the client we're doing the work for. So anytime you see this little caret down, it means I'm looking into a list. And this list allows me to search by either the number, name, city, zip, or phone, or main contact. It's a nice way that once I select that customer, it fills in all the relevant data. If you're doing work for a new customer that hasn't been in the system yet, you can actually create one on the fly, and you'll see this throughout, is that idea of, as on the fly, if I need to create a record, I can do that. I don't need to go out of this module and into another module to do it. It's just seamless. Then who's the main contact for this work? So that's the functional contact. So I'm looking into a list of my contacts and choosing the main contact for the work being performed here. What type of client is it? So is it commercial, federal, state, and local government? Who is the project manager? What type of contract, the period of performance, etc. On the contract tab, I've got information about my primary contract number. So if you have a GSA contract or some type of GWAC, you can select that contract and any type of other contract number, contracting office, and paying office associated with it. When I go to the posting tab, this is information about the financial aspects of this project. So I can see what department is the work being performed under, information about revenue recognition and billing. In this case, this is a cost type project. So we've got information about our indirects. So our billing pool group is regarding our indirects that are being applied. So you can either, pardon me, use a corporate rate structure, or you could have an indirect rate structure specific to this project. So the idea of maybe you don't apply G&A on travel from a billing perspective on this job. You can have the ways that the costs are, the indirects are billed can be different than how they're allocated. The rates could also be different, which is how we leverage what we call budgeted rates. So budgeted rates allows the system to say that the rate structure can be different, but also the rate itself could be different. And then what is your fee percent? So this is how you're recovering the profit here, or the profit you're earning. So in this example, I've got 5% on labor and 2% on travel, and then any type of withholding on this project. So that's the high-level setup of the job. Below that is what we call the work breakdown structure. So that's the levels that are below that, the main job. So this is a 60-character alphanumeric field, and this is the place that you can actually define, four main things. One is, the details regarding the charging level, tracking of funding, also the billing side of it. And what you'll see is, we'll first talk about contract and funded value. So the system allows me to assign the contract and funded value to any level of the WBS. So in this example, on this individual delivery orders, this 003 series, it's assigned at the top level. So what that means is any charge level below it can use that $10,000 in funding. If I look at my 001 series, you can see that the funding is at level 2, which means that this $2.6 million can only be used for requirements. It can't be used for data migration or go live. So it's a way that, as a company, you can manage that funding and how it's used based on how the government issues it. You can also fund based on CLIN or ACRN. And if you have incremental funding, so this $11 million of funded value, it's made up of multiple potential funding mods. So when I look at my list, you can see all the details of those mods. If I needed to enter a new one, I could just type in a little description of that mod. So we'll say mod number 46, and that mod came through today. What was the change in contract value, if there was one? So we'll say it was $150,000. And it was fully funded this time. And now once I accept this change at the WBS level, you'll see that at the overall job level it gets updated, and also at the individual charge level. So we'll say OK here, and you see it went to 15.4 and 15.2 million. And when I go back to that WBS, you'll see that that same hierarchy built this to 11.7, 11.6. So you're able to enter it at the detailed mod level. The system will roll it up to task or subtask, and then all the way to the overall job. So this is one place where Sharepoint comes in, which is if you have any type of documents related to that mod. So you maybe have an email from the contracting officer, or you've got a PDF file. Any document can be placed against one of these master records by just dragging and dropping it. So I can actually take this, drag and drop it against a record, and what it does is it puts it into Sharepoint and links it to this particular document. I didn't want to open it. Hold on one second. Just go ahead and close that down. So, it's a way that you can manage that funding at a detailed level. System automatically rolls it up, and then any documents related to it also manage those documents in the process. So that's a little bit about the work breakdown structure, the overall job. I guess a couple other things just to note here is that when you look at this WBS, there's a lot more built in than just details about charging. It's also all of the timesheet and expense report components are managed inside of NAV. So you're telling the system from a visibility perspective which of these levels should be available for charging timesheet, expense report, maybe both or neither. Who can see it? So that's the membership. How is it approved? So there's different hierarchies in terms of time, expense, or purchase requisition approval. And the number of approvals is unlimited there. So that's a little bit about setting up the job, the work breakdown structure and how that piece is managed. Next thing we'll touch on a little bit is related to managing budgets against the job. So this is the place that I can identify who are the people that we're planning to budget, what task are they being scheduled for, and then as I look through time, I'm looking at each month how many hours that we plan to budget that resource. So if I want to add this Andrew Simmons, I'm going to budget him in April, and we'll just say that I think April, I would look on the calendar, but we'll just say that April maybe has a total of 168 hours, and so he's basically going to be a full-time resource on this project starting in April. Once I enter 1 month of data, there's a copy function. What it allows me to do is I can copy that labor entry and copy it to out months. The system has what we call a working calendar, and what that working calendar will do is it'll look at how many hours were available in April. So if Andrew was full-time in April and I copy that to the next 6 months, he'll be full-time in each of those months. The system will look at that working calendar to know that. You can also copy these, and then you can plan for a labor increase or an ODC increase in out months if needed. Once I put in my direct cost on the job, you can use the Recalculate Totals function. And what Recalculate Totals will do is it'll actually calculate what is the true labor cost projected based on the hours, and then also what are the burdens that will get applied. And then in this case, this one's a cost plus 6 fees, so it also gives me a projection of what would the fee be that would be earned there for you. You can also import, export this budget from Excel. So it's a way that someone can build a budget, and you can have also an unlimited number of budgets that you manage against a particular job. So now that's a little bit about a cost-type job. Now I want to cover just a couple aspects about a T&M job, and then we'll go into the time entry side of the system. So let's go ahead and we'll hop into a different job here. Let's go into a T&M project. So general posting and contract tab is managed in a similar fashion. Where you've got differences is regarding how this work gets billed. So if I go into my resource price list, what you're seeing is for this job, so for job 2025, these are the bill rates over time. So I'm going to focus on just one category. I'm just going to filter to my consultant 1 labor category, so you can see that I've got escalated T&M rates for consultant 1 each year. And this effective date can be any date. So it doesn't need to be the beginning of the year. It can be in the middle of a timesheet period, middle of a week, whatever it might be. And then the second thing is that you're telling the system who are the people that are working under those labor categories. So let's go ahead and filter to consultant 1. So here are the people that are under the consultant 1 labor category code. And if I pull back up that prices, here's the rates they bill at. Anytime you have a list or a ledger, if you want to put that data into Excel, you can just hit Control-E or use the Send to Excel function. And what it's going to do is it's going to send that data off to Excel. And then in Excel, you're going to see it in a very similar fashion. So what's nice about this is if I want to do any type of filtering or sorting, you can do those type of things in Excel. If I needed to make a future entry, maybe I wanted to add a couple more years of those labor rates, I can actually type it in Excel or create it in Excel, also using Excel formulas, and then I can come back into the accounting system and right-click and we can paste that back in. So you can actually do that work offline, put it back in, and you're doing it when you insert it back in. It's just like you were entering it in the system. So it makes it easier from a user perspective. If they want to do something in Excel, they can do that. You can also refresh this data. So if I wanted to, if there was additional lines here that got entered over time, I could have this sheet on my home page and refresh it. It would bring in whatever the latest information is. All right, so that's a little bit about the job setup and how those elements are managed. I guess the last thing I'll cover before we go over to the timesheet is also this idea of alerts. So what alerts are used for is, in the system you can compare what was spent or billed to what was funded or budgeted. And we've talked just recently about funding and budgeting. Billing means you've posted the invoice. Spent means you've incurred the cost. So you might have timesheet costs that have been processed, but you haven't billed it yet. That would be spent. And you can trigger an alert at a certain percentage. And then that alert can go out to a PM, task manager, or you can just hand key email addresses in there. So just a great way for you to automate some of that communication as part of the project management process. All right, so I'm going to go over to the timesheet side now and talk a little bit about recording time and expenses. So on the timesheet side, as a user, a couple things you can do is, one, I can look up my PTO balance. Let me log in as another user that has some PTO in there. David, while I'm doing that, why don't you let's put up one more poll, and then that'll give me
one more poll while you're getting that ready here. And so, for folks on the phone, just kind of curious with your current accounting solution that your company is operating. We have our choices between the Deltek, the CostPoint, the GCS Premier. We do have a lot of folks who come from QuickBooks looking to move up as the company grows, Procast, and then others. Right now, it looks like we do have some folks on the line from Deltek GCS Premier, and I know that they're going through a transition, looking for folks to move into CostPoint. And we do have a lot of folks coming to us asking, obviously, if they're looking at moving to another system, might as well look around and see what else is available. We're happy to have you online and taking a look at the system. And we do have a couple other folks that are on other, so I don't know what that is, but that's where we're at with that. And I think Paul is ready.
All right, sounds good.
I'll close this back and send it back to you.
All right, so we're talking a little bit about timesheets. So a couple things that talk about this whole idea of PTO balance. So as an employee, you can look up what your current balance is. The system can calculate the accruals for you. So it'll calculate what that accrual amount is and also the accrued hours, for any of your employees' PTO. As an employee, if you need to request time off, you can go ahead and request time off. So maybe I should take a sick day tomorrow. So we'll say that I'm going to be sick tomorrow. I'm actually sick today, it seems like. And then what job it goes against. So I'm going to put it against my PTO job. Hit save. And then this would send out the email to my approver and let them know that I need that time off there. And then if it's approved, it would put it on my timesheet. And if it's rejected, they would let me know the reason why. Other things that I can do as a user is I can identify what are my favorites. So these are the charge codes that I charge to typically every period. So I can manage that list and save it to my favorites. And every time I open a new timesheet, it would drop those favorites in there for me. And then in terms of entering time, I would just go to the day that I worked, enter my hours. If I needed to enter a comment, I would just go ahead and enter a comment here. Hit OK, save it, and that's what I'm going to go through on a daily basis. And then at the end of the timesheet period, I would click my Submit button. Then this would be the process to submit that timesheet for approval. So pretty straightforward. A couple things to note is that people are looking for things like daily alerts and stuff like that. So the system does support the whole alert process. So one of the setups that's available is this idea to send email notifications. I can send those notifications to the approvers whenever a timesheet is submitted. Send a daily reminder to people. So anyone that didn't enter their time from the previous day, I can send them an email, the system will, and also copy their supervisor on it. Then you identify the time that it should go out at. Then also end of period reminders that might be required to remind someone that they need to actually submit their timesheet at the end of the pay period. So in addition to timesheets, that will also cover expense reports. So as a user, if you want to create a new expense report, I just hit Add Expense Report and identify the period of time that I traveled. So maybe it was from the 15th through the 19th. And then what was the description of travel? So I'll go ahead and just put, pardon me, travel to
Doctors.
Alabama, to the doctors. That might be a good idea too. And then I can travel based on per diem, or I could just add my expense line. So let's go ahead and do both so you get a sense of how it works. So I can type in, or I can use the drop down from the list. So I'll go ahead and select one of the places I went to. And what's the county? Click next. And then what was the period of time I was at that particular location? So we'll just make it easy and say I was there the whole time. What job does it go against? What WBS code? And then what was the code for lodging? And typically people just, the codes map to GL accounts inside the system, so they just make it easy on people to make the descriptions make sense. Now it shows me my grid, so if maybe breakfast was included in my lodging, I would uncheck this, or maybe the government provided dinner one night, I could uncheck that. Click next, and now it's showing me what my lodging ceiling is, so I put in my actual lodging. What is my room tax? Click finish. And now it creates my lines for me. So now you can see all the detail. So it's got the first day and last day of meals at 75%, and then the lodging tax. So then if I need to add additional lines, maybe I needed to record the fact that I had mileage to go to the airport. So say that I traveled 100 miles to get to the airport here, and we'll put it against that same job and same WBS. And then what type of expense is it? It's my mileage expense. So what you see is when I choose mileage, that one is actually pre-set up in the system, so it knows that miles are at 57.5 cents. So once I enter it and I just hit save, now it creates that line for me here. And then finally, I'm just going to save this. If I had any attachments, I could drag and drop an attachment for that expense report, and then go ahead and submit it. So when I submit it, this is the process that it sends an email out to my approver and lets them know you got an expense report ready for approval. If I go back into the accounting system, what you're going to see is that expense report is actually created in real time inside the system. So if we go in here, you'll see that expense report that was generated on the web. Here it is right here with all the details of where I was going to, including that mileage rate. And then from an approval perspective, who is the person that needs to approve it and when they need to approve it. All right, so now we've recorded time and expenses. We've actually started processing the expense report. Let's talk about processing that time. So we're going to go into what we call the time journal, and this is the place that accounting picks up the process once people have entered the time. So the first thing I'm going to do is run my missing time report. This is going to show me everybody that hasn't entered time or the time hasn't been approved yet. Even though we send that daily reminder, the system does, people don't always enter it. But then you chase them down and get them to do it. And then the first thing you're going to do is going to import those approved timesheets. So once you import them, then you calculate the labor distribution against it. From there, typically you're running this time journal summary report, which is going to give you the details of when I actually post this journal, what's going to happen. So it's going to hit the employee subledger, the project ledger, and also the general ledger. So it does that all in real time. Any report, you can export it out to Excel, PDF, and Word if needed. And then finally, if you use a third-party payroll service, we've got standard integration with ADP, Paychecks, and payroll networks. And then we also have an internal payroll system. So you can really manage it through any of those aspects. All right, so now we've recorded time and expenses. So those are our direct cost components. You might also have materials to get purchased. We're not going to go through the purchasing system today. And then our other element of cost would be our indirect cost. So the system is going to support any type of indirect cost allocation. This engine, it's basically, there's 4 steps to setting it up. So step 1 is you're defining what your rate structure is. So what are my pools, both intermediate and final pools? So that's step 1. The only requirement really is any type of intermediate pool needs to happen above the final pool where those costs are later allocated into. So for example, my fringe, this has, costs are calculated here, and then a portion is allocated into my overhead and G&A. So fringe needs to be above those pools. The next step is for each one of the pools, identifying what's in the pool and what's in the base. So you're identifying what GL accounts and what departments are participating. And then this account set name is just a group of, in this case, overhead accounts. So if I go into that list, you can see the details of what GL accounts comprise my overhead accounts. It's from account 7,000 through 7,700. The next thing is, how does that allocation work? So how are those costs, once they're accumulated, how are they allocated out? So this is, I'm accumulating my overhead costs. They're being allocated out to projects at both an actual and a provisional rate. How the system knows the provisional rate is the setup here called provisional rate. This is where I'm telling the system, based on an effective date, what is the provisional rate for allocations and billing. Then you also have the ability to put in a final rate there. So really an easy process to set up and manage. Then on a monthly basis, what you're doing is you're running allocate cost function, which is going to take my indirect costs that have been recorded throughout the month, and it's going to distribute a proportion of them to each project based on those setups. So the costs allocation hits both the general ledger and project ledger. So I'm going to show you from the general ledger a little bit about what it looks like. So I'll go to my chart of accounts, and I'm going to go down to my allocation section, and what you're seeing is a range of accounts for allocations. Each one of the pools, it actually has 4 allocation accounts. It's got, in this case, my overhead to projects, company site actual, offset to that, and then a provisional with an offset. So what it's doing is the actual costs are accumulated up top of my overhead section, and then they're just allocated out, in this, and it nets to 0, so there's no impact on the income statement. Same thing on the provisional side. So when I drill into it, you'll see the details. My base times my rate, the project task that it's hitting, and also the department code, and then the amount of that allocation. So yeah, it's nice that it gives you all the details, and you can see it again in that description, how it came about with that amount there. All right, so David, before we go into the billing side, maybe it'd be good to get an idea of, what is it that people are looking to improve, from a systematic perspective.
Yeah, so I'll throw another poll up here real quick, and it's just, and this is check all that apply, but main areas of focus that you're looking to improve. Obviously, if you're switching from one system to another, you want to make some sort of improvement within the company. So we're just looking at different things like the integration with other systems, reporting information, the automation of manual tasks, as well as obviously the compliance with the DCAA, FAR, and CAS. And right now it looks like we are at 100% for both the reporting information and automation of manual tasks. About 2/3 on compliance and about 45% on the integration with other systems. And again, we show that. And hopefully you got to see a lot of that that we talk about with our system as well. So Paul, I'm going to go ahead and close this, okay, and I will turn it back over to you.
All right, so we're going to cover actually just one last thing, and then we'll wrap things up with any type of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and touch on the billing process and how that would be managed here. So we'll go ahead and open up that project that we looked at earlier, and the process would go through to generate an invoice. They would run the create invoice function, and this would take any costs that have been accumulated throughout the period, and it could be whether it's a month or semi-monthly billing, you would choose the period you want to run this for. And then you say, okay, and what it does, it creates what we call an invoice proposal or a worksheet. So this is the place that accounting gets to review it and determine if everything is accurate. So I'd go ahead and print this. You can print it in different ways. So group by, this is talking about the type of expenses, how you group it. So do you group it by category group, which is the type of expense, or category group plus labor type? So this would split out my direct labor and subcontract labor and consultant labor. Cost plus fee is a way that you can actually roll your indirect costs into the direct section. Summarize the labor either by resource or by labor category. What level do you want to print this off at? So we're going to roll this up to level 1, and we're going to print it by resource and by category group. We'll go ahead and preview it. And when we preview this, what you see is, I've got information about the customer up top, the contract number, the type of contract, how much funding we have, how much funding is remaining after this invoice. Then the details regarding my labor, travel, materials, burdens, my fee, total for the invoice, any type of withholding related to it, and also inception to date information regarding that. Each of these invoices, this is like a pre-invoice, can be sent to Excel, PDF, or Word. And then after accounting reviews it, you might want to send an approval request out to operations so they can review it and approve it. And that's the function that you would run here. And then once I post it, it would hit all of the subledgers related to this, so the AR side, billings or unbilled, and then also hit the project ledger and the general ledger. Once it's posted, it becomes a historical document, but you can always reprint it. So you can see here that I've reprinted this one several times, but to reprint one, you just open it, and I can reprint the invoice. I could also email it, and then we also have the ability to print it out on government forms. So you could print it out on the 1034 and 1035 or the DD-250. So just easy to get to information, make it easier to process things is really the goal that we have. And like David mentioned, automating things that you might be doing manually today, whether it's managing funding or any part of that billing process. So that's today's presentation. I think we're gonna stop there and just see if there's any type of questions that we have. Maybe we'll just take a couple questions, David, and then any ones that are outstanding, we'll just go ahead and we can respond through through either a phone call or email. So I'll just pick a couple out of the list here that are on here. So so I guess I'll take the first question, and the question it's asking is, what is the right size company for this type of solution? So really there's a wide range of companies that are using Dynamics NAV. So I would say it's the starting point is probably around the $8 to $10 million in revenue, and sometimes it kind of depends on if it's strategic for the company, but I would say that's typically a starting point. And we've got clients that are over $1 billion in revenue, so a pretty wide range of companies there. And to know if it's the right fit for you, the thing we can do is, we're happy to chat with you and understand your current cost structure with your current system and what you're looking to achieve. And then we've got several questions regarding pricing on here, and that one's a tough one to answer. And what I'll answer is that from a pricing perspective, what we do is there's a couple different pricing models. So you can either have it purchased or have it like a rental model or a subscription model. So depending on which one you use, it's either upfront purchase with an annual maintenance, or you're just paying an annual subscription fee. So it's really hard to differentiate what the cost would be, but we're happy to follow this. I guess 2 or 3 that asked that question. And then I guess the last question, let's see. So there's a question here that says, any insights on using the software for government grant management, project accounting would be appreciated. And I guess the thing I would say is that the system can be used for, we've got clients that are not-for-profit type businesses, so they have federal grants and contracts. So you can use it for both. We set up projects for either, and we're happy to follow up with this individual to talk about some of the not-for-profit capabilities along with the core GovCon capabilities. So I think we're gonna cut it right there, and I appreciate everyone sticking with us, and sorry for my being ill, but we appreciate your time today.
Real trooper, Paul, for coming here and doing that for us. So again, I do appreciate it. If you have questions after this, you can email them to either Paul or myself, or contact us directly. Again, have a great day. We appreciate everyone, and we'll hopefully talk to everyone soon. Thank you.